Here are some of the predictions for Auburn for 2022. The FPI, pretty high on this team actually, 7.4 and 4.7. So they have them, 7-5, 8-4, kind of in that range. Athlon has them at 6-6. The over/under is only at 5.5, which means their most likely records, according to Vegas, would be 5-7 or 6-6. And again, Athlon is at 6-6. So the FPI much higher on Auburn than these other predictions. You guys know I am an Auburn fan if you followed me over the last several years. Every year except for one since I've been doing this, which I think I started in 2016. Every year I've gotten Auburn's record exactly right, except for one. I missed 1 year, and I don't say that to brag. I'm just saying that I usually have a pretty good idea of how good this team is going to be, and I don't really overhype them. Looking at this team, I think people are sleeping on them just a little bit. They have a lot of things going for them. Keep in mind, this is an Auburn team that went into LSU and beat LSU. They beat Arkansas last year. They took Alabama into overtime. I know they had all the off-the-field distractions with Brian Harsin and all that in the offseason, and some people thought, without Bo Nix and with all that stuff going on, Auburn just this season is going to be a disaster. Brian Harsin is going to be fired, and there are a lot of people that feel that way. But when you just look at the roster and what they have coming back, they have all 5 starters back on the offensive line. That is a lot of years. That is what tells the story for Auburn. It's all about that offensive line and what they have coming back, and they have everyone coming back. So that's a check mark. They have 2 of the best running backs, or one of the best running back duos, I should say, with Jarquez Hunter and Tank Bigsby back there at running back, really in the country. They should be able to run the football. With the running backs they have in the offensive line, they should be able to run the football. They've added some receivers in the transfer portal. You've got 2 quarterbacks that have starting SEC experience in TJ Finley and Zach Calzada. One of them could emerge and be pretty good for this Auburn team. And I think defensively, they'll be pretty good. They won't be Georgia good. They won't be Alabama good, but they'll be solid on that side of the ball. So again, there's a lot going for them. A lot to make you think that Auburn could have a pretty good team this year. The schedule, though, is brutal. And here is that schedule. I think it's the toughest in the country. They start with Mercer and San Jose State. So they do get 2 pretty easy games there to get started. And I think they will win both of those games. So I've got them starting off 2-0. Before playing Penn State. Remember, last year's game against Penn State was really a close game. I mean, Auburn had their chances on the road to win that game. This is a Penn State team that I think is going to be pretty similar to what it was last year. I think this Auburn team will also be about as good as they were last year, so it's a similar matchup. But the difference this year is home field advantage goes in favor of Auburn, and I think that'll be the difference. I'm going to pick Auburn to beat Penn State, and I think they get off to a great start. Remember, last year, first half of the year, this team was looking pretty good, and then they kind of didn't do so well down the stretch. But a 3-0 start for them. They play Missouri next on September the 24th. This will be another home game for Auburn. Missouri's a team that I'm not really expecting a whole lot from this year. Plus, you got home field advantage there for Auburn. Their first 5 games all at home, and I think they will win this one to improve to 4-0. I just think they're the better team. And again, home field advantage may be the difference to put some separation between those 2 teams. And then you have LSU coming up next on October the 1st. This is a tough one for me. You've got revenge factor for LSU. They want to go on the road and do what Auburn did to them last year, but it's not even the same LSU team. I mean, it's a totally different team with all the transfers, the new coaching staff. I don't really know that there'll be that much of a revenge factor in this game. Auburn is playing at home. I think LSU has a little bit more of a talented roster than Auburn. I think they are the better team, but there's just something about Jordan Hare. And if they get off to a 4-0 start, that'll make this game really, really big. The home crowd will be behind them. I think Auburn finds a way to get it done. I think they beat LSU again this year, and I've got them starting off 5-0. So 5 home games to start the season. I think they're going to win all 5 of them. Then they'll play Georgia on October the 8th. They'll have to go on the road for the first time. And how about that for your first road game of the season at Georgia? Yeah, I'm not giving them much of a chance in this game. Georgia, the better team, the deeper team, home field advantage, everything going in favor of the Bulldogs. Don't see this game really being all that close. I think Georgia wins pretty big, and Auburn kind of gets woken up here. You're off to a 5-0 start and thinking, hey, maybe this Auburn team, maybe they're going to be special. Maybe they're going to be a a playoff team, or I'm sure there will be some hype around them if they do start 5-0. But I think that all gets erased after they play Georgia. After that, they'll play Ole Miss on the road on October the 15th. Going to have to take on that high-powered Ole Miss offense. This should be a good game. I think it's one that could go either way. Auburn, one of the few teams to beat Ole Miss last year. But I think home field advantage going to Ole Miss here will be the difference. I'll say Ole Miss, I should say, will win this game. Auburn drops their second in a row. So 5 games at home, they win them all. Then they go on the road twice. They lose both of those games. And then they get a bye week, which will help after, again, a couple of tough back-to-back road games. They'll play Arkansas after that bye week at home. They beat Arkansas last season. They've done pretty well against the Razorbacks as of late. They're playing at home in this one. I think Arkansas is going to be really good. Kind of similar to the LSU game. I think Arkansas probably a better team than Auburn. I don't think there's a huge gap between them, but home field advantage will be the difference. I don't see Auburn losing many games at all at home this year, and I think that they will win again against Arkansas. So they knock off the Razorbacks to improve to 6-2. Then it's back to the road, and you'll notice a theme here. They go on the road to face Mississippi State, have to deal with all those cowbells and everything against a good Mississippi State team. Mike Leach has a good team this year. They're going to be able to score points. They've got a lot of experience, a lot of production coming back, all of that, plus home field advantage. I think Mississippi State knocks off Auburn, and that'll put them at 6-3. Texas A&M, can they stay undefeated at home? This will be a tough test. And when I look at these two teams, Texas A&M is a team that you don't want to play late in the year because they're going to be really young this year, but they're going to be talented. And that talent is going to start to really show itself, I think, in the second half of the season. I think this is that one game that Auburn is not able to win at home. Going to go with the Aggies, and that's going to drop Auburn to 6-4. So a great 5-0 start. Then they lose 4 out of 5. Western Kentucky up next. So right after Texas A&M and right before the rivalry game against Alabama, this is a very tricky game here. This is a trap game if I've ever seen one. Western Kentucky, we know based off of last year, they can score points. They should be pretty good again this year. Don't be surprised at all if this is a 4-quarter game. We've seen it out of Auburn in the past where they have struggled against these group of 5 teams. I think it happens here again. But they do just enough to find a way to get it done in the 4th quarter. Auburn survives a scare against Western Kentucky, and they get the win to go to 7-4. Final game of the year will be against Alabama in the Iron Bowl on the road. Of course, the Iron Bowl close a lot of times, but when Alabama's really good and they play in Tuscaloosa, if you kind of go back and look at it, those games really are not all that close. I don't see this one being close. Alabama's just going to be too good this year, and I'm going to take the Crimson Tide. So Auburn finishes 7-5. So I originally had this team at 6-6, but when I dug into that roster and just looking at everything they have coming back, and really the only big question mark is quarterback, and they aren't terrible at that position. They've got some guys. They've got some options. So when I start to look at all of that, I'm starting to think, yeah, Auburn might do a little bit better than 6-6. I landed on 7-5. So that is my prediction for Auburn in 2022.